Right. Yeah. So, welcome, guys. Today, we want to start looking at regular expressions, and we are just following the lesson plan that you guys have that you must be following also. And today, we want to talk about regular expressions. I think for the next 2-3 lessons, we are going to talk about regular expressions. What are regular expressions? How to use them? Writing code for regular expressions. And then move on to the next topic. And for those who are not attending classes, I would really encourage you to, those who watch the video, obviously, because we are now preparing for assignment 2. So all the topics that we are discussing now will be required for assignment 2. And the approach these days is they give you 2 weeks to complete your assignment, under the assumption that you have taken time to learn all the topics that apply to assignment 2. So if you check your lesson plan, they list the topics. This is one of them. We're going to go into design patterns and a few other topics that we'll look at. And then, so it's essential to actually, put some time aside to understand these topics, because then within the 2 weeks, all you've got to do is just worry about the assignment. You know exactly what to do, how it's done. All you have to do is just do it. And there's a lot of consistency in the way questions for this course are structured. So we'll pick a few examples from past assignments or exam papers to just understand what this topic is all about and what's required and how do we approach this topic. So today, obviously, we are looking at regular expressions. So we'll just find some questions that we can do to make sure that you understand. Obviously, there's a chance that one of the questions might actually end up being your assignment question, but we cannot really predict what questions you're going to get in your assignment. But at least what we want is when you eventually receive your assignment in those 2 weeks, you know exactly what needs to be done, and you just do it. It takes away the pressure of trying to learn something and do it at the same time, and you've got 2 weeks. So let's take this time to actually learn these topics. We didn't use this approach for assignment 1 because we started late, but ideally, this is what we should have done. Go through all the topics. When the assignment lands, we then discuss the assignment. Everybody knows what to do. You go and do it. So for assignment 2, I may not sit and program the whole assignment with you, even though I will be available to guide and everything, because that's the reason why we are talking about these things. It's because we have to learn these topics, not only for the assignment, also for the exam. So if you can learn these topics right now and you understand them and you practice them, when we start doing exam revision classes, your life will be easier because you would have done these things before. It won't be new, which means revision actually becomes revision for you. And it does lighten the burden for this course, because it's one of those difficult courses that you really want to give time, prioritize, study, and prepare yourself. So, all right, that's enough pep talk. Let's go straight into regular expressions. So the first question is, what are regular expressions? And again, please, before I proceed, if you've got any questions at any point in time, jump in, ask the questions, because that is why we are here, to ask the questions. So regular expressions can be described as, expressions. It does say expressions, right? So we've got these textual expressions that sometimes we refer to as meta-characters, and we'll look at them right now. So these meta-characters are, characters that are used to match text, which means regular expressions are all about matching text. So these are rules that you apply to match text, and that's it. It's very simple. Now, we are going to use regular expressions mainly for 2 things within our studies. Number 1, we're going to use them for data validation, and we'll go deeper into this. So validation means the user can type something, and then you want to make sure that it follows a given format. So some of the validation that we can do here includes user input, right? And we'll talk about the input clash anti-pattern. So failure to validate user input will result in what's referred to as the input clutch anti-pattern. It's usually asked in exams when they say, what anti-pattern can you see in this scenario where an application is actually asking the user to enter something, and in the code, there is nothing checking to see if that input is indeed in the required format. So that's the input clutch anti-pattern. Otherwise, the second thing we're going to be using regular expressions for to identify matches, right? So this can be broad, really, because you can, sometimes you're just trying to highlight something, sometimes you're trying to extract something, extract, for example, extracting phone numbers from a text file, so you can be, or so when I say highlight, sometimes it's just formatting. You just want to go and, let's say if we stick with our phone number example, you just want to go and make sure that all telephone numbers are in bold or underlined, something like that, which means you are then going to be given a body of text. And in that text, you have to go and identify certain portions of that given text and do something with it, like extract matches or highlight items or change the formatting of the document. We'll look at a few examples. So these are basically the most two common things we do with regular expressions in our studies. We are validating or we are identifying matches in existing text. All right. Now, let's look at the meta characters that we are going to mostly focus on, because regular expressions can be a very broad topic. It's you can study and it can take us forever to study regular expressions because it's a not broad subject, but there's a lot of meta characters involved in regular expressions. But for the sake of our studies, we just focus on a handful of them. Those are the ones we apply, we always use, and all the regular expression questions or problems that we solve are just scoped to those meta characters. So this is not everything, but it's just the scope of our studies. Otherwise, regular expressions can go beyond these meta characters that we are about to start looking at right now. So how do you match something with a regular expression? So the first thing we're going to talk about is the square brackets, right? Square brackets are used to match a single character. So it's very critical to understand these two things. A square bracket will match a single character, right? Which means whatever you put within that square bracket will be matched. For example, if you go A, B, C in square brackets, if you go A, B, C in your regular expression, it just means match A or B or C, right? Because this is a square bracket, it's going to match one item, an A, B, or a C, right? But you can also use a hyphen to specify a range. For example, you can say match everything between A and Z, which is this. And you can apply this to numbers, to lowercase alphabetic characters, and to uppercase alphabetic characters. So one thing to pick up from this is that regular expressions are case sensitive. A lowercase a is not the same as an uppercase a, right? So this would mean match only uppercase characters. This would mean match all lowercase characters from A to Z. But now understand that the basis, though, for using a square bracket is that it's going to match any character, which means it's going to match one thing. So if I'm going to describe what this is going to do here, this A to Z here. Yeah, so if you look at this A to Z here, I can then describe this as matches any uppercase alphabetic character. But what the essential thing is that I'm just saying any, which means it's matching one thing. Why? Because it's a square bracket. Okay, and then we'll do some examples and then you see this work. Another interesting meta character that I want you guys to know about is the hat here, which is used for not, right? Which means if you put a hat at the beginning of your square bracket, you are saying not whatever is in your square bracket. So if I say not, and then I put A, B, C, this means not A or B or C, which means whatever this square bracket is going to match, it's going to match any character that is not A, not B, not C. So you have to get it straight in your head that a square bracket is only matching one thing. So we'll discuss later on, what if I want to match a phone number? How then do I use a square bracket, because it's 10 numbers and a square bracket will only match one thing. We'll get there very soon, just a moment. Now, the next meta character I want us to discuss is the dot, which means any single character. Now, it doesn't matter if it's in a bracket or not. As long as you use a dot, it's going to match any character. Doesn't matter what it is, a space, an alphabetic character, a number, anything. That's what a dot matches. Lowercase w means match any alphanumeric character, including the underscore, right? And it's common notion that whatever your lowercase meta character matches, the uppercase version just does the reverse, right? Which means if we say lowercase s means white space character, then uppercase means non-white space or white space character. Lowercase d means any digit, uppercase d means not a digit. So this, if I say \d means match any digit, this is equivalent to just using a square bracket and going 0 to 9, because we've got only 10 digits. So going \d or going 0 to 9 will do exactly the same thing, right? So we've got WSD. But so in terms of meta characters, these are the most basic ones that we use for matching text, right? We'll maybe introduce a few more depending on the examples that we do, but these are the most common ones you're going to use. Alphabetic characters, lowercase and uppercase, numbers, any character, spaces, digits, alphanumeric digits. So these are the most common ones we are going to use. All right. Now from here, we want to discuss more characters, but that are used for repetition. So remember that a square bracket will match only one character. But what if I want to match more than one character? Now it depends on what you're trying to match. But a plus is used to repeat or to require at least one or more matches of something. For example, we agreed and said that a \d will match any digit, but just one. Now, if I put a plus in front of this d, now this means match at least one digit. So this can actually match for us anything, like 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This now can be identified as one match according to this regular expression that we have here. \d plus simply means match at least one digit, right? Which means it's going to match as long as we've got more than one number. As long as we've got at least one or more numbers, that whole thing becomes a match. So plus means at least one or more. Then the asterisk means 0 or more, which means it allows you to match something, which means if I go in this example and I go \d, then I put an asterisk. Now, this can match nothing. If there's no digit, it will still say, yeah, it's a match. If there's one digit, still it's a match, right? Which means at least 0 is 0 or more matches. That's what it means, 0 or more. Then the question mark means optional. So you use a question mark for something that may or may not be required. And we'll see examples of using the question mark. Then we've got the pipe, which means or, just like you use in programming, only that here we've got only one. We don't use double pipes, just one of them. And it means or. And usually you use this together with brackets. Now, this is equivalent to saying A, B, and putting this in square brackets. Why? Because A or B, the square bracket does the same thing. A, B simply means A or B. If you go back to our initial example where you say If you put A, B, C in square brackets, it just means A or B or C, right? So here, why would we use a pipe for or if we already have a square bracket doing that? Now, there are different cases where a square bracket will not suffice for your or. You need something more, right? So we'll see examples of when to use a pipe for that. But it also introduces something new here that we are looking at, which is the brackets, right? So brackets can also be used for groups, right? Brackets are used for groups. Now, these groups are used for grouping matches together, which means you can have a regular expression that matches whatever text you're trying to match, but then you break that match into groups. Like this part of the match is group 1, this part of the match is group 2, this part of the match is group 3. And it's important sometimes when you want to then do something with those groups, like I only want the second part of the match, all right? Like, for example, you're trying to extract all numbers all telephone numbers that start with 011. You're going to have to specify a regular expression that matches a complete telephone number, but then you're only interested in the 011 part, which means you put this in a group of its own, which means when you get a match, the match will say, here's your whole match, but in group 1, we've got this part of the match, in group 2, this part of the match, and so on and so on. And again, most of these things I'm explaining right now will make sense once we start doing some regular expression examples and writing some actual regular expressions. Then in terms of repetition, we've discussed the plus, which is 1 or more. We've discussed asterisk, which is 0 or more. You can also use curly brackets to specify exactly how many times something must be repeated. So if you just put 3 in curly brackets, just means exactly 3 times. But you can also specify a lower and an upper limit, which means I want at least these times, but at most these times, which means if you put 3 as your lower limit and 5 as your upper limit, it simply means match all digits. You want at least 3 digits, but not more than 5 digits. So at least 3 times and at most 5 times, which means I want this repeated at least 3, but not more than 5, 3 to 5. You can also just leave the lower limit and set the upper limit, which means at most 5. You don't care about at least how many. Or you can just use the lower limit, which then means at least 3. You don't care at most what. That's your curly brackets. Then we've got your starts and ends with. We discussed this hat here, and we said it's used sometimes in a square bracket to mean not. Like in this case where you go not A or B or C. But outside of square brackets, it's got a different meaning, and it means starts with, and it's usually put at the beginning of a regular expression, and it's normally used together with a $sign, which then means ends with. So the starts part is your hat, and the ends with is your $sign. But here you are seeing them together because sometimes they are used together for an exact match, which means you want your match to be nothing else but the regular expression that you have provided. Now, this is essential mostly when you're trying to validate user input, right? Where you say a password must be given with an uppercase character, must be at least 4 characters long, and must have at least a number and at least a special character. Then you say, I don't want anything after that or before that. This is exactly what I want, nothing else. So exact matches is where you go starts with and ends with. But if you're doing, if you're searching for text, like I said before, we've got 2 main uses of regular expressions in our studies. Number 1, we're going to be using it for data validation. Number 2, to identify matches. Now you realize that when we are trying to identify matches, we are less likely going to use starts and ends with, because we are going inside a body of text and extract matches, right? But when we are doing user input validation, usually we are saying whatever the user is provided, all of it must conform to this standard or must conform to this match, in which case we would then use exact matches. So it's very common that we use exact matches when doing, we use the exact match when doing user validation of input validation, and we don't normally use exact matches when we're just trying to match text within a body of text, right? So starts with, that's the head, ends with that's the $sign. If you use them together, it just means you want an exact match. Another meta character that we don't normally use that much is the word boundary, which we use to denote the beginning and ending of a word. Yeah, and we would see those in examples. And brackets, I've already explained. We use these for capturing groups, which means you want to subcategorize your match. Like this part of the match is this part of the match is that. So basically, these are the main characters that we use. The last one I've left out here is the backslash, which we on its own, and the number, backslash and the number, for example, 1, which we use for what we call forward lookups. No, it's backward lookup. For backward lookup. And I'll give you examples of when you do this. And this is where they say, for example, the last character must be the same as the first character. Now, you don't know which one it's going to be, but whatever character is provided as the first one, it must then match the last one. So we'll do those backward and forward lookups in regular expressions. We'll use a backslash and a number. Okay, so these are mostly the meta characters that we use for regular expressions. And you really want to be able to explain them and know exactly what they do, because when it comes to exams, they may give you these meta characters and say, can you explain what it does? I've seen those questions. What is this? And you have to say, this one does that, which is what we've just done. Now, in terms of our studies for regular expressions, right? So we said you're going to be doing user validation, and you're going to be doing text matching or extractions or highlighting, whatever the case may be. Regular expression questions are a function of two things. Number one, you want to be able to build a valid regular expression. Build a valid regular expression, right? Then the second thing is you must be able to solve a problem with your regex. And this now is the coding side, right? You could be validating input, you could be matching text. You have to know what code, how to use regular expressions in code. Basically that, how do you use regular expressions in code, right? And we are going to do mainly two things, and I'm going to repeat myself here. Number one, validate input, validate input. And for validation of input, we are going to use two main approaches. Number one, we're going to use a regex validator, with a line edit, Or number two, we're going to use an existing validator, There are three of them, validator. Number three, we are going to create a custom validator. We'll go deeper into this, custom validator. And then secondly, in code, we're going to be able to search for matches within given text. So these are the main two things you're going to do when it comes to regular expressions and writing code. Either we are doing validation or we are doing text matches. But today, let's quickly just go back to how to build a regular expression here, because it doesn't matter if you know how to code regular expressions. All questions on regex usually, and in most cases, if not all, they begin with, can you provide the regular expression? Then they can go ahead and say, now using this regular expression, can you then write code to do this? But the first thing, the essential prerequisite for regular expressions is, do you know how to build a regular expression? That's the first thing you're gonna have to do. And you're gonna have to practice how to build regular expressions, because in most cases, most of the marks will just go on the actual regular expression. And some of the questions won't even require you to write the code. They just say, build the regular expression, and that's it. and we'll see when we do revision classes what regular expression questions look like in the exam. But before then, we're going to look at regular expression questions in assignments and just do a few examples, and then we move on. Now, when it comes to practicing regular expressions, I normally, there are many online validators you can use, but I like this one, RegEx101.com. So just go on your browser, RegEx101.com. It's an online regular expression validator, which helps you to practice, which means you can type your regular expressions and see if they work or not. It's got some nice, quick reference things. Where's my mouse? Yeah, some nice quick reference guides here. So it will tell you like here, A, B, C matches either an A or B or a C. So this is basically the things that we've been discussing. So it can just help you to remember matches any character except for A or B or C. So that's your hat, which means not, right? And so on and so on. So you can actually use it to practice. And I use it also to validate my regular expressions. So here I think it's got a bunch of other things that you can do with, like it tells you here what flavor of regular expressions you want to use, because regular expressions behave differently depending on the platform, depending on the language, which means in Python, your regular expressions may not behave exactly the same way they do in Java or in .NET, in Rust. There are just some slight differences. I mean, for the most part, they will be the same, but there are just some slight technical differences between how your regular expressions may behave depending on the language. But for our studies, really, we don't usually go as that deep to actually worry about the flavor of the regex that we're using. So feel free to use whatever the default one is, because we don't normally go very complicated in our regular expressions, which means any flavor you choose on this thing will work for you. And then you've got this thing here that says global multi-line. You might want to match different lines. So you want to treat these as different things when doing your match. So this here will say, do you want to treat the whole text as when we apply the match, or you want to just apply this separately, treat these separately, and so forth? So you can change that multi-line. You can, I don't normally change that much for studies because I want to leave it exactly as it is. So things like, is it case sensitive, whatever, leave it as it is, because we assume that when we do our questions, it will be case sensitive. So let's just, that's basically it. It's a very simple online validator to use. So maybe let's just say we want to match a number, right? If you go square bracket and then you go 0 to 9, for example. So you can see that this here does not match, but these ones match. So it does highlight where your matches are. And now remember, I said 0 to 9 will match one character, not many, just one. So how come it highlights all these numbers? Like there's so many, like it has matched the whole thing. Now, it's not saying that I've matched 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, whatever, as the complete match. No. That's why you say that the highlighting is sort of like alternating here. What it has done is it has found a lot of matches here. Like you can see, it's got 18 matches, because each number is a match on its own, right? So in this case, each number is a match on its own. So if we were saying we want to match a phone number, for instance, and we put here 011 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, right? And that's a telephone number. This 0 to 9 is not matching a telephone number, because if you remove everything else and you say, oh, let's match that number, it's saying, oh, I've got 10 matches. But we want one match which confirms that this is a valid telephone number. And you can say, okay, a valid telephone number must have exactly 10 digits. So 0 to 9 is not going to cut it. It's going to match one digit. If you put 10 digits, it's going to say I've got 10 matches, 10 different matches. So it's not matching a phone number. If we want to match a 10-digit phone number, we have to say, repeat. We want text where we've got exactly 10 digits. So I'm going to put curly bracket and say 10. Now it's got one match. If this is less than 10 digits, it's not a match. If this is more than 10 digits, now you see what it does. It says, I can match these 10 here. The last 8 is not part of the match. See what happens? Which means I can then go in a body of text and identify phone numbers, because it's going to find exactly anywhere you've got 10 digits. So if I put again here another, another number there, it's going to find it. So this is where now you use regular expressions to go and identify matches within text. But if we were asking the user to enter a phone number in an input field, we would then require an exact match. An exact match is then where you go, I don't want anything before or after this regular expression. I just want it to be exactly this. So if I put my starts with and ends with on my regular expression here, starts with and ends with, now it's not a match, because it's saying this whole thing that you have given me must be 10 digits. That's not it. So your starts and ends with which are your exact matches are normally useful when you're trying to validate user input, because the user is going to provide nothing else but a phone number, and you just want to make sure that whatever the user has provided is just a phone number. But in this case, obviously, you can just, but if you're going to go, if you're trying to find phone numbers within text, then this will suffice. All right. So there are so many examples that I'll send you guys to work through and practice and see if you understand regular expressions. But these are just random examples. I'm just thinking off my head and saying, how can you write a regular expression that can match this? Another example is we want to write a regular expression that can match a name, but it must begin with an uppercase character, right? For example, I can say, let's write a regular expression that matches Kutso, right? So we want to match this. What would you do? So I'm going to do the first examples. And to give you an idea of how this works. So remember, a square bracket matches only one character. So I'm going to break this down because we are saying I want to match a name that begins with an uppercase character and the rest must be lowercase. So this is an example of what I'm trying to match, right? But in my head, I've got to think, okay, it's one character at a time. That's how you do a regular expression, one character at a time. So in this case, I'm going to worry about the first one, which is the uppercase character, because it says the first character must be uppercase. Okay, so I'm going to worry about that. Then we say the rest of the name can be made up of small letters. And I'm going to worry about that as well. Like, okay, well, how can I match all small characters in that name? So it's a combination of identifying the character and the kind of repetition that you may want in building that match. So in trying to match a name that is an uppercase character followed by all lowercase characters, I'm going to say, well, the first character can be an A to Z. Anything from A to Z is fine. But this square bracket is only matching one thing. And again, your matches are positional. So if I put this square bracket at the beginning of my regular expression, it's going to try and match the first thing that looks like that, right? Then I can say after this is matched, which means I'm done with K. I'm going to go to the rest of my name. What is it that I need to match? I need to match all lowercase characters, which means I can go with A to Z, lowercase. But this square bracket only matches one character. Now I want to match all lowercase characters after the first one, which means I'm just going to go one or more, right? So I can just go plus. Now when I do this, I get one match, which matches a name with an uppercase character. If I type Matthews here, for example, and it's all lowercase, it doesn't match it because, again, it must begin with an uppercase character followed by all lowercase characters. That's a simple example. Again, we can step this up and say, okay, I want to match a name, two names with a space in between. Exactly that. Then we can say, well, it's exactly like this, only that I put a space in between. Then there's another name, which is an uppercase character. And again, all lowercase characters, at least one or more, which means now I can go and match, if I put a surname here, then it matches. But this one doesn't match because even if I put M Matthews, there is no surname, so it won't match. I would have to put Matthews surname here, surname, then it matches, right? But then somebody says, well, we don't really need the surname. The surname is optional, which means I also want this to match with that surname. So now my regular expression is going to have to change. What can we use? We go back to our meta-characters. What can we use to match so there's no formula really to building a regular expression, but you've got to break it down and understand what is it doing. And the complete set of meta-characters that you're going to use are the ones we've come on, where is this thing? Where's this thing? Okay, we've already talked about. So here's a question mark, which is optional because it's not really required, but if it's there, it's fine. So I can then say, well, the surname is optional. So I can then put a bracket around the space and the surname because those go together. And then I can say this part is optional. I put a question mark. So a question mark means whatever is before that question mark is optional, which means it's not required. So in this case, the first one matches, the second one matches, the last one also matches because the question mark is optional. And you can see here, use of brackets. I don't really need groups, but I'm just using it to tell my question mark what portion of this expression are you applying to. But you can see here that it has put the surname in a group because brackets will always give you a group. But in this case, I'm not really using my brackets for a group. I'm just using them to denote, to tell my question mark that only this part is optional. And that's regular expressions for you. So I've demonstrated the use of a square bracket together with a plus to match more than one character. Like when I'm trying to match a name, I have to put a plus because it's made up of more than one character. We've done the space, we've done the question mark, which is optional. We've shown how you can do that with brackets. So there are many examples we can do. In assignments, I think I'll try and find more examples that I can send you for practice purposes so that you can build regular expressions. I'll give you a document that you can use to practice how to build regular expressions. But there's more to practice. I'm going to give you that document, give you some time to practice, and then in our next class, we can work through those regular expressions together and see what you guys can figure out. But in terms of assignments, here's one question from the previous assignments, which says it picks up from another question, but it says rewrite whatever was being rewritten there to include an additional line edit to enter a student number. A QRegEx validator. Now this is the coding side of regular expressions, which we'll go to. We haven't touched that yet, but we'll get there. Right now, we are just focusing on how to build a regular expression. But then when we go to validating input, we'll then talk about how to use a QRegEx validator and how to use a regular expression with code and all of that later on. But they wanted you, they said it should allow a user to enter a single uppercase alphabetic character followed by a 4 or 5-digit number that does not begin with a 0. Now, this is the only part we want to focus on, right? They wanted a password. Now, a student number, which begins with an uppercase character, followed by 4 or 5 digits, but cannot begin with a 0. So to do this question, you'd need to build that regular expression. So the most important part of this question is to figure out that number one begins with an uppercase character, followed by, which means after that, we want 4 or 5 digits. And they said cannot start with a 0, right? That's all. Only these two things. Now, ideas. How would you build this regular expression? Let's look at the first one, right? Which I agree that the first one is in uppercase A to Z in both cases. Then you went with 1 to 9, which means you excluded 0, which is a good approach, especially with regular expressions. Now, you've got to be careful with things like this with regular expressions. Don't take the not whatever literally, because if you think in a programmatic way, you're going to be not 0, which makes sense, like, yeah, it's not 0. But then what it means is everything that is not 0 can do, which means A can go here, B can go here, C can also go there, because it's not 0, you understand? So you want to avoid things like not 0, especially when all you want is it's still a number, just not 0. So in that case, you would need to be careful and try and avoid using the not 0 like this. What you want to do is, if it's not a 0, use 1 to 9, because then that excludes 0 and still keeps it a number, right? Now, the challenge we have is the last part. Then you went 4 or 5 times. Now, this means you want an uppercase character followed by 4 or 5 numbers that are not zeros, whereas the requirement is just cannot start with a 0. But it doesn't say that the next 3, 4, 5 digits cannot be zeros. This one here cannot match a student number that looks like S. Let me just use X here, because my handwriting might not make it clear. Like X, 5, 6, 6, 0. So one way to actually check your regular expression is try and give it some input and see if it matches. This one would say no. Why? Because we've got a 0 here. And our regular expression is saying 4 to 5 digits that are not zeros. So we only wanted the first one not to be a 0, but not the rest. So I would then correct these regular expressions and say, rather, let's go with the first digit. The first character is indeed an uppercase A to Z. The first digit must be a 1 to 9. Now that leaves us with 3 to 4 digits, because in total it's 4 to 5. But the first one has been taken care of. So now I can put any digit that I want. So I can go 0 to 9, or I can use \d. If I use 0 to 9, I can then go the last what? 3 to 4 digits can be anything. Now this is correct because I can indeed match this. Why? When I said it's positional, I mean this part will match the X. This part will match the 5. And this part will match 3 to 4 digits, which means even if I put a 1 here, it's still fine. And as you can see, I still end up with 4 to 5 digits. That's regular expressions for you. So we'll come back to this example and do the complete question, just a simple solution with a Q-line edit and the validator, and we'll see how this works practically, because we still have to use this in code. But I just wanted us to see, in terms of building the regular expression, how would you build it? So we'll come back to this question in our next class and do the actual solution and see it fully. But at least we now know this is the regular expression that we are going to use. So you were very close, just one little bit of information missing. That's regular expressions for you. Here's another example that we are also going to need to do a full solution on. This one, we won't do a full solution. We just want to build the regular. Actually, it's a question from previous assignments. It says different systems use different rules for choosing passwords. Here are some examples of such rules. it must consist of a minimum of 5 characters, no spaces allowed. It must consist of 5 characters, where the third character can either be a digit or an alphabetic character, A to F or A, lowercase or uppercase. Only A to F. It must consist of a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 6 digits, and the starting digit cannot be 0. Now, one thing interesting here is once you begin to build regular expressions and doing main examples, you begin to see these repeating requirements, like I cannot be a 0. Now you know, oh, if it's not a 0, it means this. So if you practice more, you see that it gets easier because you get used to using these meta characters because these are the only ones we always use anyway. So the more questions you do, the easier it becomes to understand how to build these regular expressions. Now the question says, write a program that asks the user to select one validation technique stated above using a checkbox. We won't care about that because we are not continuing from the previous question. And then to enter a password in a QLine edit. The program should evaluate whether the provided password satisfies the selected validation rule. So we really want, I think the question used an input mask and a regular expression, then you were supposed to choose which one to use to validate, whatever it was. But in this case, let's just worry about building the regular expression. Rule number 2, it must consist of 5 characters, where the third character can either be a digit or an alphabetic character, A to F, lowercase or uppercase. Now, A to F is only applying to the third character. Now I give you time. Let's work it out. And let's write your answers on the chat thing, and then let's discuss that. This will be our last example for today, maybe, or if time allows, we can then look at the last one, which we also need to do a full solution on. But this one is fairly easy, I think. This one is fairly easy to do. So let's do this one. So you're not going to write a regular expression to satisfy rule 1, rule 2, rule 3. You are providing 3 regular expressions for each of these 3 rules. So the user was then choosing which rule you want to apply, and then you validate using that rule, okay? So it's not one requirement for all passwords. I think it's 3 rules, 3 regular expressions. So it's either you go with a minimum of 5 characters, no spaces allowed, or you go with, it must consist 5 characters. Third character can be a digit or an alphabetic character. Third rule is it must consist of minimum of 4 characters, 6 digits. So just 3 regular expressions that we're doing here. And these are very easy. Let's quickly do them. So what you've done here is you've gone with at least 5, any characters, and a space at the end. That's literally what this one means here. Any character, at least 5 of them, and a space at the end. No spaces. We actually don't want a space. I'll come back to this one. Here, you've gone with the first one must be uppercase, which is not in the requirements. Nobody said anything about the first one being the uppercase, and then you said from the second one, though, to the 5th one, it must be lowercase. And please put a space at the end. That's what you've done here, right? Which again, no, that's not what it's saying here. It didn't say start with an uppercase character followed by lowercase 5. Start with an uppercase character followed by 5 lowercase ones and a space at the end. So again, no. What you want to do, you just want minimum, which means at least. So I like this idea. At least 5. No spaces allowed. So what you would have done, now this is where you can use that not, because as long as it's not a space, you're okay. You just cannot use a not with a 0 because you still want numbers, just not 0. So in this case, you are okay to just go with not a space and at least 5. And that's it. As long as it's not a space, you've made at least 5 of those. All right, so that's one way you can do it, okay? Rule number 2, it must consist of 5 characters. So whatever you do, we want 5 characters, okay? But the third one must be a digit or between A to F. So what you've done here is you went, the first two can be lowercase a to z. The third, however, must be A to F. So you've gone, the third must be A to F. The fourth must be uppercase A to F. The fifth must be uppercase A to Z. And the sixth to the seventh must be lowercase a to z. So at the end of the day here, you don't have 5 characters. You've got one, the one that you match here, then the 2 that you match here. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, because you've got 2 here. Then this is the fourth one, 5th character, 6th character, 7, 8 characters. So at the end of the day, you've got 8 characters. It's positional. So you've got 8 characters. So the idea was okay, like the first 2. So in this case, we want 5 characters. I wouldn't go with A to Z. I'll just use a dot. Any character for the first 2, right? Here. Then the third one. Now remember, it's the third character. A square bracket matches only 1 character. So this is the third one. I'll just put a square bracket here, which is for the third character. And say it can be A to F, or A to F uppercase, or a digit, or 0 to 9, or in 1 square bracket. That's what it means. So this then means lowercase a to F, or uppercase A to F, or 0 to 9. This is my third character because the square bracket matches only 1. Then for my 4th and 5th, again, it can just be any character. So I put a dot and say 2 times. So at the end of the day, here I've got 2 characters here. Here's the third one, and then the 4th and the 5th are here. So I'm doing this so that you can see the approach that I'm taking in building the regular expression. It's positional. So I'm building my regular expression going along the word or going along the match that I need to build. So the first 2 can be anything done. The third one, I put my square bracket is this. Then the 4th and the 5th, I put this one. So eventually, if it's 5 characters, you must be able to count. These are the 5 characters, and here's how they are being matched. Right? Then for rule number 3, it must consist of a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 6 digits. The first one cannot be a 0. Now for rule number 3, that's going to be easy because now we know the first one cannot be a 0. So it's going to be 1 to 9. Now I'm left with 3 to 5 digits because they said 4 to 6. So if I remove the first one, which is now kept at 4, I'm left with 3 to 5 to make it eventually 4 to 6. So from the second digit to the 5th one, any digit can do. So I can go with \d if I want, or square bracket 0 to 9, whatever one, whichever one you want. So I'm going to go with the \d here. Any digits 3 to 5. Like that. Which means eventually I have 4 to 6 digits because I'm going to get 3 here plus 1, then I get 4, or I get 5 here plus 1, I get 6 digits. So then this means the first digit is not a 0, between 1 and 9. Then from the second one to the 5th one, any digit. So that then means a minimum of 4 digits and a maximum of 6 digits, and the starting one cannot be 0. And there goes your regular expressions. And again, what you want to do when you are practicing, go to RegEx 101 and build your regular expression there. So if I'm doing the last one, for example, you can just go 1 to 9, then digits, then you go 3 to 5. And then you can test your regular expressions here. Like, okay, so is it a digit starting with 9, 0, and I've got 1, 2, 3, right? 4, 5, 6. Now it's through, it's what? 4 to 6. Oh, this should be 4 to 6 digits, right? Yeah. So now I've got 6 digits. That's it. If I put the 7th one, doesn't match. If it begins with a 0, even if it's 3, as long as it begins with a 0, it won't match. So because it's input validation, you always must put your starts with and ends with towards the end. So build your regular expression, just put your head in the dollar sign around your regular expression so that it's an exact match. That's all you've got to do every single time you are doing validation. But generally, building your regular expression, that will be that. You can do this for the first rule, second rule, third rule. Type it in here, put some input there, play with it until it matches. If it doesn't, so provide something that should match, provide something that should not match, because you already have the rules, right? So if you go to rule 1, it must consist of a minimum of 5 characters, no spaces allowed. Give it 5 characters with a space. Give it 6 characters, no space. Give it 4 characters. Just write that input down in your RegEx 101 thingy, and then provide a regular expression and check if the stuff that should not match is not matching and the stuff that should match is matching. And then you're done. So here, minimum of 5 characters, no spaces allowed. So just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, no space. Give it another 1, 2, 3, space, 4, 5, 6. Give it 1, 2, 3, and so forth and so forth. Then once I've got these, I expect only the first one to match, right? So you can then go with a regular expression. I said, not space, right? Not a space, and at least 5. And the first one matches, the rest don't. So then I know, oh, so it's actually working. So that's how you can then use the regular expressions that you build, or that's how you can actually practice your own regular expression. Give input that should match, give input that should not match, write your regular expression, check that the stuff that should match is matching, the stuff that should not match is not matching, and then you know I'm in the right direction. And if you obviously need help, you can reach out, you can post on Telegram, we can work through that together. But what I do encourage you from today is build regular expression. Start by practicing these same questions that we did here. I'll give you more questions to practice. Build those ones. Get used to building regular expressions. Then in our next lesson, we are going to come back to question number 1 and do the actual solution. How do you use a validator to validate regular expressions using your regular expression? To validate text using a regular expression, which is the same thing happening in this question. So question 1, question 2, it's all using a validator to validate regular expressions. Perhaps in this question, we may use a different technique because under validator, we've got 3 ways of using it, and we'll explore all 3 ways. And then we'll look at this question also, which wants you to just go and highlight matches within text, which is a different way of using regular expressions. So we'll do these examples, and by the time we are done with these ones, we should be ready for whatever assignment question they've got for us. Okay, so just practice, practice, and practice. I'm way over my time. A dead silent lesson today, I think. But thank you for participating. Yeah, any questions before we close this lesson?